Welcome, everyone. I'm Erin Meyer. I'm the Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at UC Merced. Today, we're here to talk to Seth Hancock from the film Leftovers. It's in observance of National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, which we are wrapping up. We had a couple of other really good panels, which you can find on our YouTube earlier this week, and this is our final panel, and I'm very excited about it. So with that, I want to have Guillermo maybe introduce himself, and then we can launch it over to Seth.
Hello, everyone. I'm Guillermo Ortiz. I'm the Sustainability and Diversity Educational Programs Manager here at UC Merced in the Office of Sustainability. I'm glad that we could be joined with Seth Hancock here and looking forward to the discussion. I think the film covered a lot of interesting topics, and I think that are extremely relevant and prevalent in society today. So Seth, thank you for joining us. And if you can, just give us an introduction.
Cool, man. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining, taking time out of your Friday. I'm honored to be a part of this, and I hope to not suck and to give you as much information and make this as entertaining as possible. I worked on a documentary we started the documentary 10 years ago in 2011, and it took us 6 years to make the documentary. We went from, and it happened the way a documentary should, in that we started in LA with just asking a simple question, and then we just kind of followed where things went. And the more we kept asking questions, the different paths we would head down. And it was fascinating. It was an incredible journey, and one that I would have never expected to be a part of. And I'm very thankful to be a part of it. As you can imagine, with the work that you guys do and what you experience all the time, it's life-changing. So, and it stays with you, man, no matter how much you try to forget about it. It stays with you, some of the stuff that we saw and the people that we met. And it was an interesting topic to see senior citizens becoming the fastest growing group of people in America to go hungry. And I'm going to tell you something that I shared with Erin that ended up being in part of kind of the promo, if you will, for this. But there was a period where we waited 3 years to finish the documentary, because when we ran out of money for post-production, getting money for to finish the documentary was a massive chore. One of the interesting things about it, I had meetings with, and I won't say who, but I had meetings with a major healthcare system provider in the United States, and the topic of senior citizens and hunger wasn't sexy enough for them, in their words, to give us money to help us finish the document. So fortunately, we partnered with Seniors First in Orlando, Florida. They went out and they solicited for us, and they were able to get the funds needed to finish the documentary, which was, it was no small feat. It was about $30,000 for a post-production process and get it distributed and all that, or not get it distributed. We had to go and there are certain things that we had to do to get it ready for distribution. So, and I'm thankful that it's still out there on Hulu and Amazon Prime and iTunes and things like that. So is that Guillermo? Is that what you were looking for?
That's perfect, and actually leads us into our questions. And Erin, if you don't mind, I'll take the first one. What inspired you to kind of take on this topic, especially as you just mentioned, it apparently wasn't a sexy topic. So what inspired you to, one, take on this documentary, and then when you were running into those financing issues towards the end, what made you say, no, this is still worth pushing and getting this story out?
So really great question. A two-parter. I'm going to, the second part is the easiest one for me to answer. So I will just say, because it's one sentence. But the first part was, so I used to live in the Midwest. And when I lived in the Midwest before moving out to LA, I created and hosted a couple of different regional television shows. And there were some guys there who knew me from these television shows that I created. They approached me and they asked me to make this documentary. And look, I'm going to speak frankly with all of you here. Okay. When they first told me what the subject matter was about, I said, hell no. Two reasons. Number one, never gone hungry a day in my life. Number two, I really don't think about getting old. I mean, it's America. We live in a culture that rewards youth and beauty and admonishes, if you will, age, right? Or the lack of ability to do things, right? Look at what we do when sports players turn like 35. We go, oh, they're old, you know? And it's sad that that's the case. But so they asked me to make the documentary from the perspective of someone who has never gone through this. And I was just like, I can't bring anything to the table. I don't know what I would do. They said, sleep on it for a couple of days and get back with us. The night before, I was definitively telling them no. In my mind, I had already said, hell no. The night before, I was going to definitively tell them no. I was laying in bed, couldn't sleep, staring up at the ceiling. And then all of a sudden, the question just hit me. And the question was, why don't I care? And that's the reason I had to do this, was because I said, okay, let me just see, let's see what's out there. Let's start down this path. And I told them, I said things like, you have to, if I'm going to do this, you have to let this evolve. You can't just say, make it here, because they initially wanted me to make it in Los Angeles. And look, no one else here is from LA but me, right? But Guillermo, because you have family here. If you make a documentary about Los Angeles, no one gives a shit. Because it's LA, it's La La Land. Everybody, it's influencers. It's everybody has their hand out wanting for something, right? No one cares. So I said, if we're going to make this documentary, you have to let it evolve. And they gave me carte blanche. So that's why I made the documentary. And then Guillermo, to answer your second question, the reason I fought was because of the people that I met along the way. Not only the people who are receiving the food, but the people who are working their tails off every day to make sure those people receive the food. And I'm going to get emotional. I felt that I owed it to them. So if you can't tell, I'm getting emotional now. I still care, because those people were the most selfless, kind, caring people I think I've ever met in my entire life. And there's this thing that happens, like when you're fighting for that money to get this thing, you're like, these stories have to be told. They have to be. We can't let them just sit in a hard drive waiting to be cut together and distributed to the world. So I felt that I owed it to them. So there you go.
So much.
Okay, done. Can I go?
We have so much wisdom to pull out of you. You're not done yet. All right. So you mentioned that you had a question, like one particular question you needed answered at the beginning. What was that very specific one question?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, that question was, why don't I care? And I that's when I started exploring and going, that was really, Aaron, the impetus for me was, why don't I care? And then from that, things started happening. Like you start looking around and you're going, oh my gosh, this could be me. This could be any of you here today. Hopefully not. But, it could be. I met the first person we ever met was and if those of you who've seen the documentary, I don't want to go too far in, or I don't want to regurgitate everything you've already seen. But let me just tell you quickly about Carla Lemley, who's the first person we met here in LA. Carla Lemley was the niece of Carl Lemley, who founded Universal Studios in the 1920s. The house she still lived in that we went to was the house that was given to her. It used to be part of the Universal lot on like Western and Sunset in and around that area. She still lived in that house. And the only reason she was able to do anything was because of Meals on Wheels. And here's this woman who is from Hollywood royalty. She was in the very first, the Phantom of the Opera. She was in the very first Dracula. At the opening scene, I think she has like the first or second line in one of the most iconic movies ever made. So it's like, if this thing can happen to her, then can it happen to someone else? And that's the kind of stuff that, so Aaron, as the movie started going, all of these questions, evolve. And then, it's like you hear about certain people, like when we were in LA, this was not, first off, so I do want you guys to understand, Meals on Wheels gave us a significant amount of money to make this documentary. But Meals on Wheels, the executive producers who first approached me, they followed, and I said to them, you can give us the money, but you have to understand this is going to happen organically. This is not a Meals on Wheels mouthpiece. It never will be a Meals on Wheels mouthpiece. It cannot, for us to tell the truth, right? So when I was meeting with Sister Alice Marie Quinn, who founded the Meals on Wheels program here in LA, she said, you know who you should talk to? And there's this guy who's up in Northern California in Marin County. And his name is Victor. And she's like, he's a character. You'll love him. And so I thought, I started doing some research, and then you go, okay, wait a second. Marin County is one of the wealthiest counties in the country. We have to go there, right? Let's see what's happening in one of the wealthiest. Again, a lot of this too was we would go up and we would have kind of like a skeleton crew and a skeleton budget just to kind of go up and see what was happening, right? Is it worth investing in? It wasn't like one of those things where we just went, let's just go up there, right? It was this, we were like, okay, let's go up and see what's happening. And we went up, and then all of a sudden, the first night we were there, Victor invites us out to watch his headbanging band. And then the next day, you're going and watching this guy go to like these different bakeries and grab, cases of bagels to give to people, or you're watching him drive around making phone calls, seeing if people were, still alive because they didn't answer their door that day. So this dichotomy of this, of this character, all of a sudden you start going, oh my gosh, look at what's happening. And then the questions become, if it's happening in one of the wealthiest places in America, what's happening in the poorest, right? And so it just started evolving. So, but I think to make a good documentary, you incessantly have to ask questions along the way. I think if you get in this mindset of, okay, here's what we're going to do, and you don't leave yourself open to being a little bit flexible, I think you miss out. And we lucked out by some of the stuff that we saw and the people that we met. So it all started with that one question, Aaron. Why don't I care?
Yeah. So what are, if any, do you have any new questions after having made the documentary, after being still in this pandemic? Do you have any new questions that have inspired you?
There a couple. A lot of the same questions are still there from before, which is sad. And from that, some of the other questions that really have come to light are, why is this still an issue?
Right.
I'm still talking about this when, I watched things like the Food Network shortly after we were doing things with the documentary. We were in this one place in Michigan, because you can't do a documentary that you have a problem, then you look for solutions, right? This one place in Michigan called Forgotten Harvest, they are not funded by the government, the state, the city, anything. They go around to farms in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, and they take all of that, that fruit or the vegetables that no one wants, the ones like the red bell pepper that doesn't look like a bell pepper. They take that and they do things with it. And you go, this is one organization in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana that's doing this. Why isn't this the norm? Why hasn't this become standard practice to where this stuff that would have been plowed under, that's not going to get used by supermarkets or supermarket chains because it doesn't, look a certain way, and gets plowed under billions of pounds of food. We talk about it in the documentary. Why is that not the norm? And that's the kind of stuff, it's still head scratching going, all of this stuff has been brought to light, but no one with the power is doing anything about it. Like there are organizations like yours, and of course, Meals on Wheels, and all this, and lots of senior organizations out there that are doing great things. But it's like, why do they have to struggle? And even like during pandemics, I think we saw, right, during pandemics that was some of the stuff that, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought one of the things I saw was during the pandemic when they were talking about cutting certain things and cutting budgets, things like Meals on Wheels and budgets like that were going to get cut again. And you're like, man, if they ever needed it, now is the time that they need this. So yeah, it's more like, why is this still an issue?
Yeah, unfortunately, that was part of the discussion in the beginning of the pandemic, was cutting essential programs that would keep people out of poverty or out of hunger. I know Aaron and I, we also host an AMA series where we bring in experts to talk about different sustainability topics. And one of the first folks that we had was from the Merced County Food Bank. And hearing about the director's experience of, what was traditional levels of service in the community and needed, and how has that changed over the pandemic. And the truth was that they were in desperate need of more help in the pandemic. People were going hungry in the community. Yeah, so it's critical.
Wow.
And I think and I guess one of the questions I've always had, my background, I before working at the University of California, Merced, I was a congressional staffer in the U.S. Senate. And one of the strongest political lobbying groups in Congress is AARP, right? And so on one hand, I'm trying to reconcile like a group that's like solely dedicated to lobbying on behalf of folks above a certain age, and then seniors being the largest group of folks who are facing hunger. So, and especially, you said, it's a question of the powers that be and who's got the right levers. From what you're seeing and what you saw in the film, can you kind of discuss what is allowing that particular demographic to face such hardships despite what many would consider like an incredible amount of lobbying power on Congress?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah,
man. And you know what? I'm going to be honest, because that's who I am. And I mean, if you saw the documentary, you pretty much know. Yeah, I speak my mind and I say what I'm thinking. AARP was my most disappointing interview and group in the documentary. And when I met with them, one of the things that they were getting ready to do was to spend $16 million. I'm going to pause for a second, let you just think about that number, okay? $16 million into painting Jeff Gordon's race car and sponsoring NASCAR. So let me go ahead and let that sink in for a second, right? $16 million. Do you know what I can do? Do you know what you guys can do with $16 million? Aaron's on my left and Guillermo's right here. Do you know what you two could do with $16 million? Do you know what No Lost Food right there? She's right below me. Do you know what you can do with $16 million? Would you put it on a NASCAR? I mean, it's one of those things where I just go, you're sponsoring NASCAR and you're going to paint Jeff Gordon's car. And they were running ads during NASCAR races to tell people about how to help folks. And I'm like, do you think $16 million could go to better benefit organizations?
Sure.
I'm no genius, but I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Yeah, that was my most disappointing. I mean, that's what, like, what could you do? I'm going to point down to No Food right there because you're right below me. What could you do? I mean, $16 million could go a long way, I would imagine.
We have a lot of projects that lined up which needs money in our community. We are not supporting just El Paso, Texas. We are supporting Juarez, which is a country itself, and our sister city. So there are a lot of people who goes hungry each and every day that we are seeing right in front of our eyes. um, you know, just not that money, the people who are wasting food in an everyday basis. One person wastes about 400 pounds a year, just one person, not a family, one person. So we could definitely, use that money or food or anything that can put some food in anybody's plate at a regular basis, on a daily basis.
Yep.
And it's crazy because you say 16 million, and even me, I'm just like, man, if we had $1 million, we had $1 million, we could do some stuff,
Yeah, when Joanne Jenkins told me that, when we had the opportunity to sit down and meet with her, and I you'll have to forgive me, I haven't seen the film in probably a couple of years. But I don't think we addressed that very issue because it wasn't one, it just didn't fit with what we were doing at that point, because we were talking about solutions and trying to find things and different things that could have been a little bit more actionable at that point. But I just remember when she told me that during the interview, and I still have all the raw footage, and I mean you could hear me clearly go, don't you think that money could be used for something else? That's probably why it didn't make it. So, but it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, man, it just painting a NASCAR. I mean,
like even for marketing purposes, I'm pretty sure that's probably not the greatest use of money nowadays with social media and everything like that.
Well, if you've noticed too, they've not done that since. So clearly, that was not like a hard-hitting massive campaign for them, right? Like things that are successful, money keeps getting put back into them because they're successful. This one wasn't. So anyway, so there you go.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because right now, I think recently the Federal Reserve put out data, I think as of 2021, basically just saying October 2021, saying that the wealth gap in the United States is increasing rapidly, like the difference between the haves and have-nots. And I won't go into the details of like top 1% or what percentile. The point is, folks who have money are making more money. Folks who don't have a lot of money, they're getting squeezed.
I have been saying that since we went out on the road, that the chasm between the haves and the have-nots is widening at an incredible pace.
Now, like you take that trend and then you combine it with population demographics, right? That a lot of developed countries in general are getting older, right? You're seeing it in countries like Japan, where they have an increasingly aging population, and there's this question of how are young people going to support social safety networks for such a ballooning aging demographic? And for here in the United States, we have to think of the baby boomer generation being one of the biggest generations that has ever kind of passed through the United States, and they are aging rapidly. And so do you see these things as related? Are you concerned that there's a lack of support now and the problem might get worse? Can we kind of talk about those thoughts?
Victor brought that up and in the documentary, and he called it's the silver tsunami, right? And he brought it up and had addressed the fact that this is coming and they don't know when or where or how impactful it's going to be. But we're going to see this wave of senior citizens get left behind. But I even remember conversations that we had that weren't on camera, talking to Victor, going, if this going to happen to, if this can happen to this group of seniors, there's no question that it can continue to trickle down and trickle down and trickle down to where we see it becoming the norm. And that's the reason why when Aaron asked me, are there any other questions that I have, that's where I still scratch my head and go, why is this still an issue? We are already seeing the data. We're already seeing the trends. We're already seeing the widening of the chasms, right? Of the haves and the have-nots. We know what direction we're heading in.
Mm.
Why are we not meeting it head on? And then we go back to the question that you asked, AARP should be out there lobbying for something like this, right? The National Council on Aging, they're fighting, but man, they're a really small group. Meals on Wheels is fighting. They're an incredibly small group. It's interesting. Meals on Wheels and Feeding America hate each other. They do not get along at all because one sees one as a huge marketing ploy. The other one sees one as a group that just bitches about things. I mean, we're sitting here going, we have the solutions, but it's just for some reason it's not happening. And that's this kind of stuff that's all I can do as a filmmaker and a storyteller is promote that, right? That's what I can do. And but hopefully all of us can get together and maybe do some fighting. So
no, absolutely. And speaking of a filmmaker, and you mentioned you came from the Midwest and then living in LA. What got you interested in that industry? And obviously LA, for so many reasons, is the place to be if you're working on films and doing all that kind of work. But what was that transition like for yourself on a personal basis, given that those two regions can be so different? I'm personally from the East Coast and even from New Jersey, so coming out to the West Coast, it's a completely different vibe than
right.
Some of us out here in the East.
So I guess I was already doing television in the Midwest when I moved out here, so I was very, very familiar with that. The hardest part about living in LA is I have a love-hate relationship with LA. I will tell you the hardest part of living out here was, and you're from the East Coast. Erin, where are you from?
I'm from Denver, Colorado.
Okay. So Denver has a very similar vibe to some Midwest parts. There's some parts of Denver that are very LA. But don't get me wrong, I love Denver. So growing up in the Midwest and the East Coast, when you tell someone you're going to be somewhere, you're going to be somewhere, right? So when I first moved to LA, and I would meet with people and they'd go, okay, let's get together next Thursday at 2. And then between that time and next Thursday at 2, there would be 15 different text messages. Are we still on? Are we still on? Hey, are we still meeting? And I'm like, I told you, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. So the hardest part is cutting through the mounds of bullshit that are in LA. Other than that, I love it here. I mean, it's, well, the traffic sucks, but everybody knows that, right? So, but, no, I found people really, really receptive to the idea of the film and the filmmaking out here, especially the people that I worked with. It was just the funding where we had, issue because it wasn't sexy. But in terms of people being really receptive and wanting to work with creating documentaries and things like that, yeah, I never had a shortage of people really interested in wanting to help or be a part of it. So yeah, but I want to go down one of the interesting juxtapositions that I had was when we were in Marin County and meeting with Victor and then looking at one of the wealthiest counties in America and then asking the question, okay, if this is what's happening in the wealthiest, what's happening in the poorest? And we go to the poorest in Owsley County, Kentucky, right? I mean, it's a really small county in terms of the number of people, but I mean, at that time, it was the poorest county in America. I will tell you, man, I met the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life at that place. I'm still friends with them and I still keep up with them. And I mean, I'm not talking about the people who are doing things there. I'm just talking about the regular people of Owsley County. I'll never forget, these people had nothing, but we would constantly get asked to come over for dinner. Hey, can we make you dinner? Why don't you guys come on over? We got some here. What you guys want? Hey, you guys want some moonshine? Oh, we got to ask that question a few times. So my videographer did take them up on some moonshine when we left because we were driving. So, but other than that, man, I mean, it was really cool to be a part of that and see what was going on and see a lot of people really trying to help each other out. And, I mean, they didn't have the funds, but that was the biggest eye-opening experience for me, because that's when you first went, okay, if it's happening in Marin and it's happening in Owsley, now it's an American issue. It's not just a wealth issue. It's not just a this class of people versus this class of people. It is straight up just an American issue. And we saw some things in Owsley County that or in Boonville there that I've never seen in my entire life. Like I actually saw a pill mill. Like you've heard of pill mills where people would go and like there would be a doctor who would just write a prescription for any kind of hydrocodone, Oxycontin, whatever. I would see people standing in line and going to just have a doctor write a prescription for them. It was every Wednesday. And we were there on a Wednesday and I got to see the people standing in line going to get a prescription to go and get their hydrocodone or something filled. And that's why in the documentary, when you hear them talking about like grandparents are taking care of their kids and things like, because a lot of those parents were addicted, that was real. It was absolutely real. And it was eye-opening and frightening.
Well, that's such a, because as someone's like worked in government, like we all, it's right. We think of the wealth problem. We think of, the pharmaceutical industry and the problems with the over prescribing. And then you kind of, it's always, that's why I think documentaries are such a great format, is that like to see those two huge, essentially public health issues, like colliding together and wreaking havoc on a community, it's heartbreaking, right? Because these are powers that be. This is like industries and capitalism on a scale that like ultimately is way above what any small town is really dealing with, right? You know what I mean? Like but the impacts that it just ripples through their community in ways that were there any other things like that you saw that you were that you were thinking about and you were like, yeah, I wish I could do another documentary just like, right?
The videographer flat out said, when we were chatting one night at dinner, he goes, dude, we could just make a documentary about Boonville. And I said, we could, because not only was there the pill mill, but they have a town square. And at night, there would be ladies of the night. I mean, you're talking about a town of like a couple hundred people, and there are still these prostitutes that are coming out, and they're so the town hall is the town hall, it's the courthouse, it's the police department. But then there were ladies that were outside of there prostituting. And we were just like, it was such a microcosm of every, and I say this in general terms. I don't know this for a fact. Of course, I don't know this for a fact, but I would have to venture to guess that it's a microcosm of what a lot of poor small towns are struggling with, where it's people are doing anything and whatever they can just to try to make something or to try to feel better or to get some money, whether it's prostitution or through a pill mill or whatever. It was kind of or selling hooch, selling moonshine, right? People were just trying to do whatever they could to either feel better about their lives or do something to get ahead. And it was eye-opening. And Boonville could be a microcosm for a lot of small, or an example of, the microcosm of what's happening in a lot of different places around the country. So yeah, we could have made a whole documentary just on Boonville.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've been asking a lot of questions, but if anybody else, you can also throw those questions in chat. More than happy to read those out for folks.
Yeah. The whole documentary was a blast. So yeah, just whatever, throw out your questions.
I had a question. You've mentioned Victor and the people you interviewed, and those involved seem super invested in providing food for others. And I think at the very end, when you said what people were doing, and it said Victor had moved to Reno, Nevada, and was no longer involved in sort of that. It felt sort of shocking. I don't know if you have anything else to say about.
Shocking but not shocking, right, Sarah? Because couldn't you see that he was one of those people that would burn out very, very quickly because he was so passionate? Like, that's why in the documentary, that's why I asked him, I said, what keeps you? The sole reason I asked him the question, what keeps you going every day, was because just sitting back and observing and watching, that's when I went, this guy is like, he is so passionate and so invested and so emotional that you just knew at some point, right, that he would just snap, right, or break. And it was when he told me that he completely got out of the game, it was one of those things that was really, really sad, because you felt that the seniors of Marin lost a true friend and advocate. But at the same time, you went, kind of saw that coming. You know, that's the one thing I will tell you, of all the people that I met, Victor was one of my favorites because of his passion, because of what he did for his community, because of how hard he fought. He was one of those guys that's speaking the truth. Man, there are some things that I don't think aired, and please, you guys may have seen the documentary more recently than me, so you can correct me on this. I don't think we didn't put in, there was a study that was done in Marin County about the mating habits. Maybe you talk the mating habits of does, the white-tailed deer. Did we talk, did that make the documentary? No.
I don't remember that.
Okay, so Marin County invested like $150,000 to study the mating patterns of the white-tailed deer in Marin County. And he just goes off. Well, I think why we didn't put that in was because he was going off on so many other things. It was like, okay, you just didn't want to feel like it was, just rinse and repeat, right? So but yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things that, and then there was another study that it was like a $300,000 something study of the effects of the kids walking to school and not taking a bus. And he's like, I can tell you what the effects are right now. They're going to be healthier and there isn't going to be any pollution. Give us that money. Because he would have to go and just fight for what he would call table scraps, right? And that's where you just go, man, this guy is giving it his all every single day. When is that burnout process going to take place? And I would venture to guess that you guys in your industries, Sarah, I don't know what industry you're in, but the fact that you're here, I'm assuming that you work in this industry. But I would have to assume that you see a lot of that same type of thing every day, where it's hard for you to find your motivation sometimes. Am I wrong in that assessment?
Well, I work at UC Merced, but I actually work as a librarian.
Oh.
But
we don't respect the Dewey Decimal System, right?
Which I don't care about so much, since we use LC. So, but anyways, I think the idea of there's a lot of sort of professions or work that have a lot of emotional labor in them. And I think that came across a lot, even though people were obviously in many ways loving this work because they knew it had great value. But I think that emotional labor definitely came through.
Yeah, it's hard. You're speaking about this, and I'm like, oh, when am I gonna break? On Sunday, I opened our fridge, and like literally we have an opening and a closing shift, and I was sitting there working and stocking our community fridge, where it's just an outdoor fridge, free produce. Anyone can take any food they want. Anyone can leave produce. So I was stocking it up, putting more fruit and veggies in there. And this woman and her family are just like walking by, and I'm like, hey, do you want free food? And they come over, and one of the little boys comes over and grabs a little apple out of the door and starts like munching on it. And he's like so happy, and he's like running circles around the area and like gleeful. And I took this little video after asking, of course. It's like, can I take a video? This is just like making me so happy. And they're like, of course. And I'm like, do you like the apple? And he goes, yes. And he's like running around with his siblings, and they're eating apples. And it was beautiful.
That's very cool.
Today, I was stocking the fridge again. And as a side note, our fridge is emptying out so quickly lately, which is just a sign of the times. But a homeless gentleman walked up, and I couldn't speak with him because of a language difference. He was Spanish speaking. I don't speak Spanish. And it wasn't as heartwarming of an experience. because there's that gap, but then also you could tell he was struggling and he was filling up his bags, and I took him to the back where we have more, and it's like, do you want more of this? And was just trying to give him as much as I could, and also trying to figure out what he was saying and ask him what he needed. And that was a lot more challenging, obviously. That was a hard situation. So it can be rough.
Yeah, it can. You know what? I do want to talk about one thing really fast, and that is the solution, some of the stuff that we saw. And the woman who is at, is it Praia in El Paso. One of the places we went to, obviously we went to Austin, Texas, and we looked for solutions there. And then we went back to my home of Detroit. And I got to tell you, it's some of the stuff that you're seeing at these places. Like and I think that's where the revolution is going to take place. You know, Guillermo, when you talked about this earlier, like what are the things, what are we seeing? I think that if anything, where we see the revolution taking place, it's going to be like companies like Forgotten Harvest, or, you know, in Detroit, where, you know, you've got these, and what you guys have seen of Detroit is true. You know, you'll see this house here, and then a house that has been raised, and then just another vacant lot, and then a vacant lot, then a house, all this stuff. You're going to see all of those things. And then what's cool is you're seeing people build gardens, right? And they're building gardens to feed the folks in the neighborhood. And I'm just like, you know, when one of the guys from UC Fullerton, Dr. Joseph Weber, says, you know, that it's, you know, we've lost that sense of community. And, you know, then Kate from Lansing, Michigan talks about how we have to really kind of get back to that sense of community. I think that's what we're going to see. At least I hope that's where the revolution is going to take place, but it's going to be on that grassroots level. So, you know, Aaron, the stuff that you guys are doing, and Guillermo, the things that you're doing, and Praia, and everyone else here who is, you know, Ingrid is a social worker in Orange County. You know, you're going to see things happen on, you know, those individual levels. And until something drastically changes, I think that's where it has to start, right? The revolution starts at home. At least it's going to have to. I don't know where everybody else is from, Karen and Gerardo and Jeff and everybody. I don't know, but I'm hoping that at least you guys are, you know, at least active or doing some things that whatever you can to try to help in any way that you can.
Sure, we'll do our best. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to give a special thank you to Jeff, who has joined us. He is providing a lot of these solutions and making a really big impact in our community. He picks up surplus food as part of my program. He's a volunteer, and he brings it to those in need. He's also he works at the local high school out here with their garden and other things. So he's educating the young minds and feeding the young minds. So thank you, Jeff. You're a big part of the solution. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Jeff typically has great questions, so feel free and unmic, unmute, or you can put them in chat too if anyone wants to ask anything.
Yeah, please do. I love talking about this documentary because it was such a tremendous experience. And then, but to those of you who are doing this, Aaron and Praia and Jeff and Ingrid and everyone else that's here, this is me, from me to you, saying thank you so much for what you do and how you're helping in any way that you can to make a difference in these people's lives, because it makes a difference. You guys see that too.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Whoa.
I had a question, if you don't mind, Seth.
Not at all, please.
So our students are trying to help out a school in Africa, the Dajara Academy. And I know it's a little off topic for you maybe, but it's to do with the documentary. We're trying to find out somebody who would be interested in doing a documentary about how a school in the United States collaborates with a school in Africa. And it has to do with the Green Ribbon School. Our Yosemite High School was awarded the Green Ribbon School. It's the only continuation school in the nation that's ever attained that level. And some of the students were talking about a documentary about these girls in Africa. How would we go about trying to to see if there was any interest in that type of documentary?
So I would, you know what I would tell you, and I'm going to be frank with you about this. If you went and you came, like you started reaching out down to people here in LA, everybody's going to say, okay, it's going to cost you this, 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 and this, right? And before you know it, you know, you're going to sit there and you're looking at like, okay, how am I going to raise tens of thousands of dollars, right? I would tell you this, nobody knows your story. I think you should make a story. And I say, you hand your kids, it would be really cool. Spend your money on things like an editor and putting a story together. But what would be cool is you tell your own story and like hand those kids like a bunch of different small video cameras and start to somehow have them start telling their stories about why they're doing it and follow along in a journey. Because man, I'm already interested. But when you said that, the first thing I thought of is I want to see what these kids are doing. Like I want to see it from their perspective, you know, rather than have like a narrator or someone else. Man, it would be killer to see it from their perspective, because they're the ones who are the few. I mean, I hate to sound like a cliche or like a Whitney Houston song that I believe the children are our future. But don't you want to hear what they have to say about this? I think that would be cool. And then once you have something put together, then at that point you can go and say, listen, we've already done the hard work of shooting this and doing this. I guarantee you'll get people who will want to put this together or help you edit and tell your story. And then once you have a finished product, that makes it easier for you to reach out to distribution companies or companies that are here in LA who are going to get you distributed. We just happened to find ours serendipitously. It wasn't like, you know, I was actively going, we're going to get this on HBO. We're going to do it. It was just a good story always finds a home, I think, Jeff, to be honest. But it starts with the story. And if you can tell a good story first, which sounds like you have a great one, I would start from there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I hope that you were able to put that together. That would be awesome. I would love to watch that.
Do you mind sharing your email with me, and then I can shoot you what we put together?
You ready? Here it is. My email. It's very, very difficult. You ready? It's my name. It's Seth at SethHancock.com. SETA@SETHANCOCK.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can put that in our little update email after this too.
Awesome. Yeah, and if anybody has any more questions, please. Hi, Karen. And
hello, Seth. Thank you. Thank you for great information. Just to connect with Aaron and Jeff, those emails or those websites that I'm sending you with all the federal money that's available, there's a couple in there that would help Jeff on this endeavor, which is USDA money that funds exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's federal money, and you just have to apply. And Seth, you may be aware of all the money. It's amazing. There's a lot of money that's wasted, but there's a lot of money that you can go in there and find and be able to tap into it, being nonprofit, being school oriented, things of that sort that you more than qualify. And it's telling the story like you just did. It's breaking your story down. It's selling your product. So
you're absolutely right about something, Karen, and that is that Jeff has an advantage over, say, someone like me or anyone else out there who's trying to make a documentary. When you have a school like that, people love or would rather give money to organizations like that to help them do something that they're already doing, or at least tell their story. That is a very great point that you brought up. So please, if you would, share that with Jeff and everyone here, or Aaron, so they can get out, because that's a great place to find money.
Yeah. Well, and hunger is a hot topic in DC right now. There's people that are interceding and fighting, and on the USDA site, with getting grants and scholarships of that sort. It is well known across the world, and the hunger and the crisis that we're in right now. Right here in the Central Valley is the poorest of the state of California, is where we live. The poorest communities, just an hour and a half southeast of here, is the very poorest and hungry, very, very hungry. They don't get a whole lot. We're a farming community. Central Valley is the breadbasket of the world. So things have hit hard in this area. Our local food bank, thank goodness for that. That's been around since 2004, which I had the privilege to be part of the board of directors, just the recording secretary. But part of what started that, which was the Hunger Task Force that started in probably 2000, that started seeing the needs of people, having 15 different pantries in our county. Now we're up to over 60 pantries that serve the hungry. So and there was millions of pounds of food that was leaving our county because we had nowhere to store it. That's when we were in abundance. So the food bank is really a great place that does a lot of things. So and interact with them too, Jeff, because the executive director is great. He shares information with the grants and scholarships also for your endeavor, and resources, supporters, great stuff out there. So with that, thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, Karen, just to let you know too, when we were in DC and we were interviewing with the National Council on Aging and dealing with AARP and all that stuff there, hunger was an issue even back then. We had Bernie Sanders lined up for the documentary, but I chose not to interview Bernie Sanders because we couldn't get anyone else. And I just didn't want one particular side of anything. And if you notice, when we told the story, I mean, we just tried to kind of tell everybody's story. We tried to tell more of an all-inclusive. And, Bernie then, as he is now, was a very polarizing figure within the government. So, but there was if you can find it, it's from like 2011. There's a thing where he goes off on Rand Paul. And it was, the three people who were having a debate were Bernie Sanders, Rand Paul, and Al Franken. And Bernie Sanders puts Rand Paul in his place. And it is one of he grabs him and just starts smacking him around. It was really kind of an interesting video, but we had access to Bernie, but I chose not to interview Bernie for the documentary. But yeah, people were talking back then too about it. So I just hope something, yeah.
Seth, do you are you ever, when you're thinking about the film, because you mentioned that it was a while ago, but do you ever kind of sit back and think about how relevant it still is? I'm in particular, I'm thinking of I feel like it was even just last week with Elon Musk on Twitter with the UN secretary on world hunger, right, saying like a fraction of your wealth could go a long way, essentially. Do you see kind of like this almost as if the documentary keeps popping up and up and up again?
And that's where I said earlier when I was like, how is this still an issue, right? It's like we started this in 2011. We got it to 2014. We waited 3 years to get the funding to finish it. It got finished in 2017, and then it got international distribution in July of 2017. So it took 6 years to put this together. But even during that 6 years, one of the things that when this went out, Guillermo, think about 6 years after it started, we're going, still relevant. We're going, think that people will watch this and go, can't relate. And then we're like, nope, it's still relevant. The only thing that dates my documentary is, I think at the end, when Seniors First had this plaque up that says, I pledge to end senior hunger by 2020, right? That's the only thing that dates this documentary. If that wasn't in there, or the people, talking like the people who had passed away that I had put in there, right? That's the only thing that dates this, because it's still relevant, and that's sad. That's so sad. Yeah, great question. Because it's the truth, right? Any more questions? By the way, the one I cried on camera when I met Paul, and he would give whatever money left over at the end of his thing to feed the children. Those were real tears. And I had a different camera guy up in Northern California than I did everywhere else. And I was yelling at him because I'm like, dude, his name was Frank. And I'm like, you are missing this. These are legit tears. This guy, and like we caught him at the end, but those are legit tears because man, here was this guy who was so benevolent, right? That's why. So Guillermo, when you asked the question earlier, why did I keep going to make this, or that when I said I could end it with one sentence, it was for people like Paul, it was for people like Carla, it was for people that I met in Boonville, Kentucky. That's why.
Well, I think it goes to your point, right? With all of these really just disturbing trends of this wealth inequality, and folks are constantly, I mean, I know I've had conversations with folks on campus, with personal groups, but I mean, if you didn't come from money, whether you're lower economic class or middle class, you just feel like over the years it's getting harder and harder to get ahead. And I think part of what I thought was so helpful in what you said is that investing and getting all these people personally involved, which is often at the expense or what the government should be doing, has allowed for folks to kind of, I'm hoping, and as you say, bring people together, get communities involved once again. Because if you can't count on the government, then folks looking after each other, looking after your neighbors, schools looking after each other, etc., might be the way to go, because the problem's not going away, and it seems like it's only getting worse.
Sure. I just wanted to point out to Carolyn that she missed a heck of a show earlier. I got up and danced. I did this whole routine. You missed it, Carolyn. I'm so sorry. I'm just kidding. None of that happened.
So am I. I deeply apologize. I was very much looking forward to this meeting, and for whatever reason, my Google, I did something yesterday and it switched the time zone. So
it's all good.
Sorry.
I was just messing with you. But no, if anybody has any other questions about the places we went or what we saw, that line, so just to let you know, none of anything that you saw in the documentary was staged. Nothing. Everything that we got was legitimately happening when we got it. Now, we did know ahead of time that when we were in Austin, Texas, and they said, you've got to go to Lomita because more and more people are coming out for Lomita, and it's now starting to become a massive issue of feeding. So when you saw that line of people, and I did that whole comparison to the lines of folks that we saw, during the Depression. Now, we knew that there were going to be lots of people in Lomita. I didn't know it was going to look like that. So as soon as we got there, we rolled out. When I was driving there following the truck, we got out. My camera guy, before we even got out, I said, you're rolling now. And so as soon as he stepped out, he was already rolling and getting that, because once the truck got there, then they would start filling the baskets and the line would move. But we wanted to show that line because that was legit. And there were people in that line who were not senior citizens as well. There were people who were, in their 30s. And I'm sure, Priya, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Priya.
Yeah. And Priya, I'm sure you've seen that as well, because Lomita, is not, it's right in the heart of Texas. It's a small town in Texas. And I know you probably deal with that a lot. But anyway, so I wanted to let you know that everything that you saw was legit. Karen, you're over here now. You've taken the place of Aaron. You're right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Just real quick, can somebody post a link of that documentary? I believe I've watched it, but it's been a couple years ago. So I'd like to watch it again, and I'm sure I deleted it.
I think, I think it's free now, right? Too. Like if you go to YouTube and you type in leftovers, I think it's up there for free. Or if you have Amazon Prime, it's just type leftovers. Or if you have Hulu, it's there as well. But I think YouTube now for free, right? Am I right? Am I wrong in that? Did I see it?
It is, and I'm about to throw it in chat.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'll also add it in our update email. So I'll send an email after this with the recording. So you can watch what you might have missed or rewatch this. And then also there will be some links to things that we've already spoken about.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And I just threw it in the chat.
There you go.
YouTube link.
Who else has any questions? It's a Friday. My time.
I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind, Seth. When I go into,
I am usually this handsome. Thank you for asking.
when I go into a project and it's completed, at the end of it, there's usually something that stuck out as being special out of it all. And something that there's also something that you didn't expect, or some that your project came out better, or there was something that was a curveball in your project. Can you tell me at the end of this project, what was a touching moment or a special moment?
Yeah.
What do you expect? Some type of curveball?
Dude, I can very, very quickly for you, Jeff. Two things. One is it's the people. I keep coming back to that. I was so touched at the people and this sincerity and how genuine everyone was, and seeing people like Victor, who, was really doing this because he cared. It wasn't a show. And you have to understand, I live in LA where everything is a goddamn show. I mean, seriously, half the people that you see on Instagram who live in LA who tell you that they go here, here, and here, they ain't going there. They're really good at Photoshop. That's what's happening. And I guess to bring in like a second part of it is, selfishly, Jeff, I'm going to say it was me, man. Like, because again, you're talking to a person who didn't want to do the documentary initially, right? And I said, okay, why don't I care? And then all of a sudden, like, the biggest change for me was going to Marin County, meeting Paul. And when he legitimately talked about giving the rest of whatever he had left over to, feed the children, and I lost it. That was a changing moment for me, because that's when I went, look at what's happening in this world. Look at these people who are doing whatever they can to help other people. And I'm that guy who, when Victor asked the question, how many people are ordering appetizers at dinner? And I'm like, me. What if you didn't order an appetizer and you took that money and you gave it to somebody else, right? And you tried to help people. That was, so the two biggest takeaways for me were, number one, the people who I met were just absolutely amazing and awesome. And number two, I don't have to be a douche all the time. I can actually be a legitimately nice person and help other people out. So there you go. I think you're not on a journey of, but this is just me, but I think if you're not on a journey of self-discovery, or at least always trying to improve yourself, then something's wrong with you anyway. I genuinely believe that. I think that we should all be trying to improve ourselves and be better tomorrow than we were today. And I kid you not when I say, everybody has a mantra. I have a mantra. Mine is, don't suck today. That is my mantra. I wake up every day and go, don't suck today, which is a way to be better today than I was yesterday, right? So
if I can add, you didn't suck today, so you did a good job. How about that?
I didn't suck today, man. That's great. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I didn't suck. All right.
Awesome. That was fantastic. Just for sake of time, to respect everyone's time, I think we'll wrap up. Any final thoughts? This is fantastic. I love your energy, Seth, and your passion and motivation. It's great.
I think anything worth doing is worth doing right, And if you're gonna do something, put forth an effort, or at least, I always say, like, and I still believe this. If I'm putting my name on something, and I don't care what it is, I don't care if it's a song, so I am no longer a photographer, by the way. Really briefly, and I know most of you don't care or give a shit, but I'm gonna tell you, because that's who I am. In 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I am 5 years cancer-free, which the type of cancer I had, I'm actually cured. So it's not like remission, it's whatever.
That's good.
During cancer, I had to take a couple of years off because, cancer, and the photography industry changed dramatically during that 2-year period. So I walked away from photography, but fortunately, I have been playing music my entire life. I play 11 different instruments. I don't sing, but I play 11 different instruments, and now I write music for television shows. I've been able to move. But so my point in telling you and saying all this, Aaron, is that if I'm going to put my name on anything, I don't care if it's a documentary, a photograph, a song that I'm doing for, a TV show, whatever, it's got to be great. It has to. And so, you better come with good energy and be positive about that every single time, because, you may never get another chance to do it again.
Beautiful. All right, let's take that into the rest of our day and do everything with passion and excellence and give it our all.
Don't suck today. Guillermo, I'm talking to you.
I'm going for it.
I like that.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks all.
And thank you for joining us.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Bye.